Every message we get growing up from our family, our friends, the media, has conditioned us to believe that finding the one person, is the answer to our inner pain, our loneliness, our sadness, our insecurities, and our fears. The myth is that that special someone will come, love us unconditionally, and heal all our childhood wounds. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. The truth is, and it's actually a happy truth, as you will see, that our partner can no more relieve our sense of unworthiness or unlovability than food, alcohol, drugs, or any other addictive activities we tend to engage in can. All these activities only distract us from our emotional pain. That external focus on substances or other people can only bring temporary relief. In fact, that assumption that our partner is our rescuer is one of the reasons why relationships struggle and fail. We're waiting for that special someone to rescue us, to heal us, to support us, to keep us afloat. And if the person we're with is not quite doing that, we might conclude that they must be the wrong person, or that we need to change them into the right one. So once the wonderful honeymoon period is over, we often get scared, and we might engage in one of three projects. The first project is to try to change that partner into that loving rescuer that we hope he or she will be. And I've tried to do that in my relationships. I've tried to change my partner. And guess what? That doesn't go so well. The second project is that we try to find out what our partner doesn't like about us. And then we strive to become who we think he or she wants us to be. And in that case, we've just directed the shame and criticism at ourselves. And we're no longer in that loving space. We're not closer to unconditional love or acceptance than when we're trying to change the other person. Now, the third project kicks in when we give up on finding the love that we want, when we close our heart to him or her. And then again, we tend to do one of three things. We either seek for a new partner, that eternal search for the one. We might numb down and stay with the original partner with that closed heart. Or we convince ourselves that we have to be alone because we believe that our needs for love will never be met in an intimate relationship. Now, the exciting news is we can all stop searching for the one outside of ourselves, because you are the one. You are the one your inner child parts, your vulnerable parts have been waiting for. You are your own healer. And by that, I don't mean don't be in relationships. In fact, relationships are going to be more beautiful when you shift that focus. Because the missing piece we have not been taught is how to lovingly parent ourselves, how to take care of our vulnerable parts and show up as our best self in our relationships. But once we fully realize and embrace that truth, we can show up completely differently. We release our partner from that pressure to have to be that unconditionally loving parent for us. And when both partners do that work, couples can exchange their controlling, needy, or just not very functional interacting and relating to each other with what Richard Schwartz calls courageous love. And courageous love is accepting of all that I am and all that my partner is. Because inside all of us is a group of family of sub-personalities that we call parts. And we even talk this way. We might say, a part of me is angry, a part of me wants to control this situation, and then there's a part in me that's disappointed. Yet I also feel it's silly to be disappointed. So, like in a real family, these parts have intricate relationships with each other. There's parts that are protecting more vulnerable parts. Anger and control are very strong protectors that come up when our vulnerability is triggered. There's parts that polarize into opposites. There's parts that align with each other in pursuit of the same goal. And then there's parts that are critical of other parts, like that part that thought it was silly to be disappointed. So when we explore these parts and their relationships and their functions, we can take care of those parts in us that feel vulnerable, and we can show up way more conscious in our relationships. Because in our partner's place, our aware self, our conscious self, becomes the primary caretaker of those parts. And that releases our partner to be the secondary caretaker. If we don't do this, if we don't take care of our vulnerable inner child parts, those younger parts that feel lonely or sad or scared, what happens is that those protective parts start parenting us. Anger, control, shutting down. That will show up to protect our vulnerability. A second thing that can happen is that that inner child literally jumps into the driver's seat. And that's when we show up moody, cranky, whiny, or we feel overly scared, overly helpless. And our partner is suddenly left with this childlike behavior, not knowing what to do with it, because they've been put into an involuntary parenting role. So, interactions with our partner, of course, from those protectors, from anger, control, judgment, defensiveness, even our rational self that's very distant, they don't tend to go so well. So ideally, we want to learn to speak for those parts rather than from those parts. And I'll give you an example with 4 different parts to explain what I mean by that. So imagine you've got dinner ready, and your partner shows up almost an hour late without letting you know. And I can see from your faces that you're going, that would trigger some emotional responses in me. That would trigger some of my parts. So there might be a worried part. There might be a disappointed part. There might be an angry part. Maybe there's even a judgmental part. And when he or she arrives, you might still be taken over by that part and speaking for that part. Or you could strive to unblend from that part, to have a certain separation from it and speak for the part. All right, so let's start with the worried part. If you're still blended with worried, it might sound like this. Where were you? I was worried sick. You could have been in a car accident and I wouldn't have known. Now, speaking for the worried part might sound something like this. When you didn't show up, a part of me was worried that something had happened to you. Could you please let me know next time so I don't need to worry? Could you let me know that you're running late? So which one do you think is the beginning of a more productive conversation with your partner? Number 2, right? All right, we also have a disappointed part. That might sound something like this. Where were you? I made dinner and I was waiting and now dinner is cold and don't you care about me at all? Now, unblending from that disappointed energy and speaking for the part might sound something like this. When you kept me waiting, when you didn't come, a part in me was really disappointed. And another part in me even wondered if you don't care about me. Again, which one is the better invitation for a productive conversation? The second one, yeah. So we've got an angry part. And I actually like this. I get to be a bit of an actor here. So let's see how the angry part sounds. You're so selfish. I've been waiting. I had dinner ready. But you only think of yourself. Or you could do your best to unblend from that energy and speak for the part. And that might sound like this. A part in me is really mad at you right now for keeping me waiting. We have one more part, the judgmental part. And that would sound something like this. You're so unreliable and you're so rude. You can't even show up when you say you will, and not letting me know, that was really inconsiderate. Or we can strive to stand back and say, as we're speaking for that part, when you keep me waiting, I have a really hard time not being judgmental because I feel disrespected. Can you please let me know next time when you're running late so I can plan? And often we speak from not just one of these parts, we speak from several, right? We might be angry, disappointed, and worried, and it all comes out. And then you can see how we're firing off each other, speaking from those parts rather than being able to come from a centered place speaking for them. Now, with courageous love, we also want to have the courage to speak for those vulnerable parts inside. And like I mentioned before, that's really important because otherwise that inner child takes over. And we need to really speak for those needs that that inner child has. Now, internal family systems, or short IFS, founded by Richard Schwartz, is a psychospiritual model that perceives all humans as healthy and whole. All humans have inner wisdom and healing energy. And the healing entity in the system is actually our core self, our essential self that we're born with. That self is the natural leader of all our parts. That self is eternal and knows all. That self is not affected by trauma. That self connects us to everybody and all living things. And that self is presence, conscious awareness, heart-centeredness, heart openness. When we are in self, we are able to be curious and compassionate with ourselves and others. We show up as calm, connected, and confident. And clarity, creativity, and courage are present. Self is also characterized by love, by peace, by harmony, by joy, and gratitude. And the more we take care of our own parts from that self, the more we can also show up from that calm, connected, and compassionate stance with our partner. The awareness of our parts, of our natural multiplicity, is the best antidote to distant and conflicts in relationships. Because instead of believing that my partner is this angry person that shows up at times, or that controlling person, or that distant one, I can relax into the awareness that this is just a part of them, and that part actually serves the function of protection. And then we can, as a couple, work with our own parts, get back into self, into heart-centeredness, reconnect, maybe make amends when necessary, and show up much more lovingly with each other, and keep each other safe. Because if these parts are protecting us, it's all about how can I keep the other one safe. But not only does this knowledge of our multiplicity help us to navigate storms, when one or both of us are taken over by a part, for example, but it also deepens the intimacy and love. Because we all have fears that once we have exposed those parts that cause difficulties, that we will forever be seen by the other person as somebody with character flaws. But if both people know this is just a part of the other one, a part that actually needs empathy and acceptance, it is so much easier to be loving and compassionate with each other. So as we learn to love and accept our own parts, we also learn to love and accept all parts in our partner. And there's something truly magical about being able to trust that all of you is welcomed in a relationship.